I'm always inspired when through doing quite a bit of work in TV and film and various album projects. I work with a whole bunch of people who are like infinitely more accomplished than I am in so many like levels of the game, and it's always like usually if I work on a project with somebody else that I admire and that I feel is like more successful than me, whatever that means, usually the things that I take away from it and not, oh, isn't it great how they got that sound, or that bit of music that they wrote there is great. It's totally just a attitude thing of how their creative process works. And I'm always like blown away with certain people by, I guess I think the main thing, which is like my I guess like one of the main things that I try and work on for myself is like not comparing yourself to other people and what they're doing, and in a sense just caring less about other people's opinions, which isn't to say that you shouldn't care, and it's not like, oh, don't care, but it's like that ability to not take on other people's stuff and have this focused idea of your own stuff is, for me, what seems to separate people that I look at and are kind of like, yeah, I want to be where they are in 20 years time. Those are the people that seem to have this really defined idea of what their project is about and what their creative process is about. So in a sense, it's kind of like if I come up with a brief of what my album is about, in a way, that's me also kind of saying, well, I've defined this as this thing, which means it's not any of those things, which means I can't even now compare it to any of those things because those things aren't about this thing. It's almost like a self-protection mechanism in a way, because it's like, I'll listen to, hundreds of records that I listen to frequently that still like blow my mind, and the sort of the bad record producer on this shoulder is kind of like, yeah, but your drums don't sound as good as blah blah blah, and then good record producers like, yeah, but that record's not about what your record is about, so you can't even, it's not even a reasonable or sensible comparison. And then suddenly your drums, because they're about this thing, are amazing because they're about this thing.
I love it. Could you?
It's a total self-fulfilling prophecy.
Could you share with us, like, maybe a few examples of when you saw that in action with someone you're working with? If you don't mind naming names, that would be killer. But just because it's such an important realization. So
the last, well, and I basically didn't really do anything last year because it was crazy. But the year before, I guess it was end of 2019, Arca asked me to set up a show for her in New York. And I met Arca through some work that I was doing with Björk, because Arca was playing with Björk for one of the tours that I was working on. And Arca had been asked to do these 3 shows at the Shed in New York, which is this sort of newish custom built arts venue. And she calls me up and she's like, so Matt, I've got this project and I'd really love it if you could basically build me a stage where I can just go and play music. And I was like, okay, have you got any more information than that?
That's a very broad brief.
and she's like, well, the kind of stuff that I do, just, I just want a playground. And I was like, oh, okay, an electronic music playground. And yeah, we talked about finessing that idea a bit more, but fundamentally that was the brief. It was like, I want to be able to walk on stage and have an electronic music playground where I can make amazing stuff happen. Go do it. And it was amazing because in a sense that in a way it's kind of like that's exactly what I would want to do for a live show, but you always have these restrictions of like, well, who's going to set that up and how am I going to get all this gear from there to there and how's that going to sync up with that and how are they and so in my mind I'm like, well, that's never going to happen, I'm never going to do that. But because it's an Arca show and she's basically saying, well, can you just go and make this happen? I'm like, yeah, okay, I can make that happen. So the thing that was amazing about that for me was that basically it was this amazing opportunity for me to kind of improvise, really. So the very sort of short version of the story is that she had a stage set up that had like an acoustic piano with some looper pedals on it, an Ableton setup, this incredible like pole dancing pole that somebody had made for her that had like electronic what am I trying to say, like proximity sensors to it. So as she like went around this pole, it kind of created stuff.
Amazing.
Plugged into a Prophet 6. Created all this stuff. So all these different all these different electronic stages. Anyway, I'm getting the point of all this is the thing that actually blew my mind about that, more than the fact that she'd asked me to just make all this stuff, was the fact that she was just going to walk on stage and make up a show based on this electronic music playground, right? So there wasn't a set list. The Ableton computers had like some stems of some of her tracks, which I think maybe she used like once. And she basically like improvised a really, high level show, which was, I don't know, maybe 2 hours long. And it was just incredible. And the ability, like the confidence to do that, I find amazing. The ability to like define that show and say, okay, this is what this is. So I'm not going to compare it to this. Yeah, there's going to be bits where no sound comes out. Yeah, there's going to be bits where I need to figure this out. There's going to be all this stuff that in the wider context of putting a show together, a lot of people would kind of go, oh, well, we can't possibly do that because, there's going to be like 30 seconds of silence there where somebody literally like unplugs this and plugs it into there, But like that just sort of blew my mind, because it, like the confidence in yourself to not only just say, yeah, I'm just going to go and do this and basically make the whole thing up, but also the sort of confidence to know that is those are your boundaries. This is the definition of your show, or this is the concept for your album, or whatever, however you choose to package that up. In a sense, like it can't possibly fail. Because you've been so confident about defining what it is that who's going to tell you that it was bad or wrong or whatever, All people could do is kind of go, yeah, that was awesome.